Dr. Subi Chaturvedi. Dr. Subi Chaturvedi is currently the head of Tik Tok for good. She has distinguished herself in areas of supply chain management, strategic advisory, public policy, communication, public relations, and digital economy. She has served as a member of the UN Internet Governance Forum (MAG) and as the global co-chair of the NetMundial Initiative for the Future of the Internet Ecosystem, which emphasizes on making Internet free and public good for all. She has emerged as a leading voice for developing countries and emerging economies in Internet governance, powering access and bringing the next billion online. During her tenure at Yes Bank Global Institute, she has been providing strategic advisory to industry bodies and corporates for navigating funding, regulatory ecosystems, and areas of investments. She holds a PhD from IIT Delhi and a Master's in Mass Communication from the AJK Mass Communication Research Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Subi Chaturvedi to share her remarkable contributions and views with us.
Thank you, AV team. Now I'm requesting Ms. Subi Chaturvedi to give her address on digital innovation and doing good for 5 trillion economy.
Good morning, Indore. I just want to thank all of you and the entire team for a very, very generous and kind introduction. Namaste and good morning, everybody, for showing up. I'm deeply honored and extremely overwhelmed to be here with you, especially following in the very large footsteps of speakers before me. Ms. Anuaga has been an inspiration to me and all the other women and all the business leaders. And I separate women from leaders because often we get bunched in categories. We also had Yusuf Saab on the dais, and he's someone who's taught the meaning of doing good. He's also someone who's given us messages on setting up businesses and making a difference right at the same time. A lot of us here today are business professionals. A lot of us here today are management students, and therefore I speak to each one of you. These are life stories that have taught me and inspired me my entire life, where you can balance success and you can also balance your responsibility towards the community. So my session today speaks to the questions of the $5 trillion economy. I'm very happy to share the stage with Professor Himanshu Rai from the IIM Indore, who belongs to this city and who belongs to all of you as much as he does to me and all of us. As an academician, and I started my journey as a teacher, there are things that you're told that you will be and you can be. He's someone who's pushed the boundaries by not just being a brilliant professor and a teacher, but he's also taught us how you can continue to contribute in every sphere of life in forming and educating policy for good. And that is why I'm very, very delighted to have two great men, Ashish, who holds the reins on the National Stock Exchange and keeps our hearts and our minds moving up and down each time numbers change on the screen, and Professor Himanshu Rai. So can we start this session with a huge round of applause for all of us here on the stage and for your own selves. I don't know if Mr. Rathi is still around. All the students, and it's my experience with Indore and the Conclave did not start today. It started yesterday when I was welcomed by a group of 3 student volunteers who taught me excellence in every sphere of management. And that, my friends, is my conversation today. How do we get to the $5 trillion economy? What are the opportunities that we have with us today? And what are the 3 key big ideas that will get us there? I'm so happy that we're doing this here in Indore. And this is my first visit, and it has really been my misfortune that I've not been able to experience the city in all its ways and boundaries and joys before. It has taught me so much over a span of these 2 days, and those are also some of the learnings that I want to share. We could not have chosen a better city to power this conversation around how does India get to be the $5 trillion economy. Why am I so happy and joyous? Because I don't see this as a problem. I am absolutely certain when 1.32 billion Indians set their minds to doing something, they will achieve it. So it's not a question of whether this will happen. It's a question more from the point of view is how this will happen and how soon we can get it to happen. So it's about timing and what are some of the initiatives that will get us there. So when we speak to the questions of the big challenges, when we're looking at what is working for us, I hold a phone in my hand. We are now about 40% of Indians who are already online. When I give you numbers, that's over 1 billion unique connections. When it comes to data consumption, we are now averaging about 8 GBs of data per month. We're second to nobody when it comes to consuming data. The World Bank says that for each percentage increase in penetration of connectivity, so if you bring 10% more people online, you can increase your contribution of the GDP by 2%. And that's not a small number. I want to give a lot of credit to where it is due. The function of a democracy and the function of a government in a democracy is to give businesses, communities, and citizens an environment where they can do what they're meant to do better to their fullest potential. So when this government decides to work on policies and simplifying policies that makes ease of doing business relevant for businesses, that's when India grows and that's when India succeeds. We've grown tremendously. We've covered over 100 ranks in ease of doing business. We're simplifying policy and that's what's working for us. When it comes to fixing, what we need to do is we need to make sure that if 40% of India is online, the rest of the 60%, which Professor Rai also mentioned in the morning, which lives in villages, also needs to be brought online. And how do we do that? It's not only making sure that they have access to the internet, it is making sure that they're using the internet meaningfully. I come from a brand that is an application on your mobile phone and that helps you make short form videos. Now you would say, what is a brand that's making videos which has humor, that has jokes and that has pranks got to do with the $5 trillion economy? So 80% of all content on the internet by 2020 is going to be video. And when you want to take your brand to the market, when you want to tell your success stories about business, when you want to speak to stakeholders who matter to you, whether it's the government, whether it is the media, whether it is the youth, whether it is the people who will consume your products, and whether it is the world, the answer lies to the $5 trillion question is to make in India and start making for the world. And when I say make in India, I use that with great responsibility. I do not mean that overnight manufacturing ecosystems will crop up in India and we'll become a hub. We'll be able to move businesses from other geopolitical places and especially give a run for their money to China. When I say make in India, I talk about making sure that what India has to offer to the world, whether it is services, whether it is the traditions, whether it is culture, whether it is newer, innovative ways of doing business, whether it is disrupting how we do business. And hats off to Reliance and Jio to be able to do that, to be able to create newer disruptive models of change. And therefore, the mobile, which I started my conversation with, remains one of the most critical ideas as to how we can get to the $5 trillion economy question. So here's what's happening on TikTok. People who you would have never seen online, more than tier 1 and tier 2 cities, people from tier 3 and tier 4 cities are making videos, they're selling products, they're speaking a language which is as savvy and as short as 15 seconds. Can you give me your elevator pitch in 15 seconds? Can you tell the world what is it that we're about and what is it that our business means and what is the value proposition in 15 seconds, and also keep it entertaining, joyful, and fun? Now let me get to the big challenges. So by 2022, 10 to 12 million new Indians will join the workforce. All of them need about 100 hours of reskilling. When we're talking about urbanization, we're making sure that conversations that we hold today for the $5 trillion economy are not just restricted, and this is a challenge that world leaders across the world are being asked to address. And therefore, Anu's history of doing public good as Thermax, of powering Akansha and Teach for India, is a lesson that all small and big businesses in the room today, and those of us who will watch us online and those of us who will watch us on Twitter, need to learn. So governments are good when they work with private sectors. But when it comes to making sure that we give voice to the people in the room who are not present, we make sure that we create smarter cities, but we also create cities which are inclusive. We need to make sure that we continue to engage with governments after we bring them into power. And that is planned urbanization, making sure that public infrastructure and making sure that cities not just work with the platforms of data, but also make sure that amenities, inclusion, and actualization of its citizens also takes place through the platforms that we're creating. The bigger questions of balancing growth with development. So whenever we speak about our young people, we talk about the demographic dividend. And that's why people on the stage today are very, very relevant. Platforms of online internet spaces bridge this gap between access to affordable and high quality education, which is why yesterday when we announced our MOU with IIM Indore, we were thrilled and delighted because we want to use the power of the internet for doing good. When we look at availability of higher education, which is fantastic, there are few people who get through. But what about the others who are left behind? Through the use of platform of the internet and particularly TikTok, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the knowledge that resides in institutions of eminence and excellence can be brought to the larger country. And here I want to share a story. Indians are known for innovation and jugaad, and often we don't understand the semantics of what it means. When the tsunami happened several years ago in India, the government of India decided to give fishermen GPSs, which was supposed to help them find their way back if they were to get lost. The moment the fishermen on the coastal states of Andhra started receiving these GPS satellite phones, they decided to mark spots in the sea where the catch of fish would be available to the maximum possible potential. And that's us in every form of the world. You give us technology and we'll show you what more can we do with technology. The last bit here on both challenges and opportunities, when we look at internet, we often see it as search platforms, we often see it as social networking platforms. One of the biggest things that's happening around us is the fourth industrial revolution. So when we talk about preparing our businesses, whether they're small, big, large, preparing our governments, because I also see governments as organizations which need to be run efficiently. The fourth industrial revolution is different from any other revolution. It's different from the industrial revolution in many, many ways. The speed is much faster. The impact and the size and scale is much faster. We are very fond of saying data is the new oil. I disagree with that statement. Oil can be put in a barrel and oil is still finite. You still need ways and means to transport oil. Data is all pervasive. So what we do with our data, how we use the mechanics of artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning. And this is where collaboration between industry and academia comes in. When industry gives academicians who are very good at teaching and who are very good at research actual business problems to solve, that's when real innovation takes place. So if I hold a phone in my hand, if I hold an iPhone in my hand, the actual cost of production of an iPhone is some cents, while you pay over $300 to buy a phone. The real innovation and the real value add is taking place when you're looking at research, development, and patents. And that's how we need to structure our approach to the $5 trillion economy. So these are some of the big ideas that I wanted to leave you with. When we are looking at SMEs, and therefore my first conversation was about Indore. Why Indore? Because Indore is home to over 1,500 extremely valuable small and medium enterprises. Indore contributed in 2011 over $14 billion to India's GDP. And that deserves a huge round of applause because this is your hard work. Why do I start with being your own brand? The IMA Conclave today doesn't just make it into record books. The IMA Conclave tells the world that we're serious about the problems of the future. We are not reactive. We are people who understand the problems and we're looking for solutions well in advance. And therefore, you need to tell your stories better. You need to make sure that, like Mr. Rathi, everybody else is saying this enough and more times, that this is the biggest central management conclave that takes place, and we look at problem solving. If we can look at approaches to the $5 trillion economy, not top down, but bottom up. कई बार नीतियां दिल्ली से आती हैं. अगर प्रगति की दिशा, दृष्टि और गंतव्य हमारे शहरों से तय होकर दिल्ली तक पहुंचे, the policies are going to be for public, the policies will be for good, and the policies will be much more meaningful and effective. That's the big idea that I want to leave you with. When we start talking about, thank you, when we start talking about unlocking the potential, Gandhi has been someone who's inspired me tremendously. We're in his 150th birth centenary years, sequentials. We're celebrating his visions. We're celebrating his ideas. Gandhi believed that India lived in the villages. Our Prime Minister has put out the Digital India vision, which is about creating infrastructure, which is about making sure that e-services are delivered online for citizens. It is also about creating e-gov and e-marketplaces. But more than anything else, the real revolution has already started taking place in the villages. So the project which inspires me the most is BharatNet, जिसके बारे में हम सबसे कम बात करते हैं. 600,000 villages in India, 250,000 village panchayats are being connected through high-speed fiber. We are very comfortable when HUL and FMCG companies start talking about India as a rural market. I want to start seeing the villages of India as the hubs of knowledge, as the hubs of local economy, as the hubs of giving newer models of growth potential and living successfully in a community. So India has a lot to give and share with the world. And this potential, if we start making it and we start converting it online, if we start using the internet for telling your stories better, if we start creating a culture of giving, which is also with responsibility, I have absolutely certain that $5 trillion economy is not just a vision. It has to be, and it will be, reality. What will make this happen? We need to make sure that we are reskilling ourselves, we are preparing ourselves for the future. So I'm a product of the IIT Delhi. I'm very proud of my alma mater. What is equally important is engineers start looking at liberal arts education. Humanities students start acquiring skills in coding. Girls are more in ICT. Women are present in technology. I want to see more women like Anuaga. I want to see more women in leadership roles. I want to see more women in decision-making positions and not just ticking the boxes. The socio-economic inclusion of rural India is the sure shot, one-step solution to getting to the $5 trillion economy goal. And one of the most important thing is wellness and public health. And that is why Cipla and Hamid Saab become so relevant. They have made sure that affordable healthcare, when large corporations start thinking about public good, that's when real change begins to happen. So this was the final vision, and I want to leave you with the story that moved me. It's a picture that I took the moment I landed, and this is the first visual that I saw. That is Maharani Ahilyabai, and you know her much more than I do. She's someone who has inspired me. She's someone who should inspire how governance and policy making should happen. One of the biggest stories was how she was prepared to read and write when women did not go to school. The other big stories were her focus on healthcare, her focus on making sure that she built roads, that she established cities, not just here. She made Indore from a tiny village into an amazing, well-planned city. And more importantly, what she did was she allowed businesses to do business. She ran the country. She created an ecosystem where there was law and order, where people were not troubled, but she made sure that her policies and her leadership allowed businesses to flourish and made sure that taxes were in order. She made sure that she created cities which became centers of religion and learning. Her contribution to even Kashi and Haridwar are amazingly notable. And that's the wealth that Indore is sitting on. And the last bit was when there was a Brahmin who objected to her being elected as the leader, she made sure that later on she gave him also a position, because you have to learn from your worst critics possible, and you have to keep them nearer and you have to keep them closer. And that is the last bit that I wanted to share. It's been a very inspiring and a very moving experience for me. I have learned so much from the life histories of Anu and everybody else who's spoken before me. I'd be very happy to take questions later if we have time. But thank you so much for being an amazingly wonderful audience, and thank you very much for having me here. Thank you for listening.